I thought that day would end with a speeding ticket. Instead, it became the day I met the man who changed my life forever. The hot Texas sun beat down on the empty highway outside Austin as Mason Carter gripped the steering wheel of his aging silver sedan. The speedometer climbed higher and higher. 80, 85, 90. He knew he shouldn't be driving that fast. He also knew he was already 20 minutes late. His phone kept buzzing on the passenger seat. Another message from his manager. "Where are you?" Mason groaned. "If I lose this job too, I'm done." His rent was overdue. His car needed repairs. His bank account contained less than $50. Life wasn't exactly going his way. Then he saw flashing red and blue lights in the rearview mirror. His stomach dropped. No. 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 The police siren sounded. There was no escaping it. Mason pulled onto the shoulder and rested his forehead against the steering wheel. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. A moment later, he noticed a police officer approaching. The officer looked older than most cops Mason had seen. Tall, broad-shouldered, calm. His badge read, Hunter Brooks. Hunter stopped beside the driver's window. "License and registration, please." Mason handed them over nervously. Hunter studied the documents before looking back at him. "Do you know how fast you were going?" Mason sighed. "Too fast. That's one way to describe it." Hunter's serious expression made it impossible to tell what he was thinking. Mason prepared himself for the worst. "I know I messed up, officer." Hunter glanced toward the road. "You were nearly 20 miles over the limit." Mason closed his eyes. There it was. The ticket he couldn't afford. Hunter walked back to his patrol car. Several minutes passed. Each second felt longer than the last. Mason calculated the damage in his head. A speeding ticket would destroy what little money he had left. When Hunter finally returned, Mason noticed something different. The officer wasn't angry. He looked curious. "You seem worried about more than a ticket." Mason laughed bitterly. "You want the short version or the long version?" Hunter folded his arms. "Try me." For some reason, the words just came out. Mason told him about the overdue rent, the car problems, the extra shifts, the endless bills. By the time he finished, he almost regretted saying anything. Hunter remained quiet. Then he surprised him. "You remind me of someone." Mason frowned. "Who?" "My younger self." For the first time, a small smile appeared on Hunter's face. Completely changed his appearance. Suddenly he seemed less intimidating, more human. Hunter looked down at the ticket book in his hand. Then he closed it. Mason blinked. "What are you doing?" "I'm giving you a warning." Mason stared. "A warning?" Hunter nodded. "Don't make me regret it." For several seconds Mason couldn't find any words. Nobody had cut him a break in years. "Thank you." Hunter handed back the documents. "Slow down." "I will. I'm serious." Mason laughed. "So am I." The officer shook his head, almost amused. As he turned to leave, Mason noticed something unexpectedly lonely in Hunter's eyes. The kind of loneliness he recognized immediately because he carried the same look himself. Neither of them realized it at the time. Neither of them knew that this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning. 2 days later, Mason's car would break down completely, and the only person he would know to call was Officer Hunter Brooks. 2 days later, Mason stood beside his car on a quiet Austin street, staring at the smoke rising from under the hood. "You've got to be kidding me." The engine had finally given up. He kicked the tire lightly in frustration before immediately regretting it. The tire wasn't responsible for his bad luck. His phone battery showed 3%. His wallet contained $23. And his shift started in less than an hour. Mason rubbed his face. What now? As he scrolled through his contacts, one name caught his attention. Hunter Brooks, the police officer who had pulled him over. The man who had unexpectedly given him a second chance. Mason hesitated. Calling him felt strange. They weren't friends. They barely knew each other. Still, Hunter had handed him a card and said, "If you ever need help, don't be afraid to ask." At the time, Mason assumed he was just being polite. Now he wasn't so sure. After another moment of hesitation, he pressed call. The phone rang twice. Brooks. Mason immediately recognized the deep voice. Ooh-ee. A brief pause followed. Mason. The fact that Hunter remembered his name surprised him. Yeah. What's wrong? Mason glanced at the smoking engine. My car died. Hunter sighed. Where are you? 20 minutes later, a black pickup truck pulled beside the broken sedan. Hunter stepped out. Even off duty, he carried himself with quiet confidence. Mason suddenly felt embarrassed. Sorry for bothering you. Hunter looked at the car. You didn't bother me. He lifted the hood and immediately frowned. That's not good. That's what I was afraid of. Hunter laughed softly. The sound caught Mason off guard. For someone who always looked serious, Hunter had a surprisingly warm laugh. After arranging a tow truck, Hunter glanced at his watch. You eaten yet? Mason shook his head. No. Come on. Where? I'm buying lunch. Mason started to refuse. His pride wanted to refuse. His empty stomach had other ideas. An hour later, they sat inside a small diner downtown. The smell of burgers and coffee filled the air. For the first few minutes, conversation felt awkward. Then somehow it wasn't. Hunter asked questions. Mason answered. Mason asked questions. Hunter answered. The hours passed faster than either expected. For the first time, Mason learned about Hunter's life. Hunter had spent nearly 30 years in law enforcement. He lived alone. His marriage had ended years earlier. Most of his friends had moved away or become busy with their own families. Mason noticed something unexpected. Hunter seemed lonely, not sad, just alone. The realization made Mason's chest tighten, because he understood exactly how that felt. When they finally left the diner, Hunter drove Mason home. Before Mason got out, Hunter said something that surprised both of them. We should do this again. Mason smiled. You mean lunch? Hunter nodded. Yeah. I'd like that. Over the next few weeks, lunch became coffee. Coffee became dinners. Dinners became long conversations. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. For Mason, it was strange how naturally Hunter fit into his life. Most people eventually disappointed him. Hunter never did. Whenever Mason had a problem, Hunter listened. Whenever Hunter had a rough day, Mason somehow knew exactly how to make him smile. Their friendship grew stronger with every passing week. One evening they sat together at a riverside park watching the sunset paint the Austin skyline gold and orange. Neither spoke for several minutes. The silence felt peaceful, comfortable, safe. Mason glanced toward Hunter. The older man was looking out across the water. For a moment, Mason found himself noticing details he hadn't noticed before. The strength in Hunter's hands, the silver beginning to appear in his hair, the kindness hidden behind his serious expression. A strange feeling stirred inside him, one he wasn't ready to name. Hunter turned and caught him looking. What? Mason immediately looked away. Nothing. Hunter smiled. Right? Mason laughed nervously. For some reason his heart was beating faster. A week later they met at a local restaurant. Everything seemed normal until someone suddenly approached their table. A handsome younger man. Without hesitation, the stranger wrapped Hunter in a hug. Hunter, it's been forever. Hunter stood and returned the hug. Mason felt something unpleasant twist inside his chest. The feeling appeared so suddenly that it shocked him. Jealousy. The realization hit hard. Hunter introduced the man as an old family friend. The conversation lasted only a few minutes before the stranger left. But the damage had already been done. For the rest of the evening, Mason couldn't stop thinking about it. Hunter noticed immediately. You okay? Fine. You don't look fine. Mason forced a smile. I'm just tired. Hunter didn't seem convinced. Later that night, Mason lay awake staring at the ceiling. One question repeated itself over and over. Why had seeing another man hug Hunter bothered him so much? And why couldn't he stop thinking about it? The next morning Hunter sent a text. Mason stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. And another. For reasons he couldn't explain, Mason didn't answer any of them. 3 days passed. Then 4. Then 5. Until Hunter finally decided enough was enough. If Mason wouldn't answer his messages, he would find him himself. 5 days without a reply. 5 days without a single message. 5 days without hearing Mason's voice. Hunter sat in his patrol vehicle staring at his phone during a break. Still nothing. The silence bothered him more than he wanted to admit. At first, he told himself Mason was busy. Then he convinced himself that Mason needed space. By the 5th day, even he stopped believing those excuses. Something was wrong, and he intended to find out what it was. That evening, Hunter drove to the warehouse where Mason worked. The sun had already begun setting over Austin when he spotted him loading boxes into a delivery truck. Mason froze the moment he saw him. Hunter climbed out of his pickup. Their eyes met. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Hunter broke the silence. "You planning on ignoring me forever?" Mason looked away. "I've been busy." Hunter crossed his arms. "Try again." Mason sighed. The older man knew him too well. Hunter stepped closer. "What's going on?" For a moment Mason considered lying again. Then he realized he was tired of pretending. Tired of hiding. Tired of carrying feelings he didn't understand. "You really want to know?" "Yes." Mason laughed bitterly. "Fine." He set down the box in his hands. "That guy at the restaurant." Hunter frowned. "What about him? The one who hugged you?" Realization slowly appeared on Hunter's face. Mason shook his head. "I figured he was your boyfriend." For 1 second Hunter stared. Then he unexpectedly laughed. A genuine laugh. Mason blinked. "I'm serious." "I know." "Then why are you laughing?" Hunter rubbed the back of his neck. "Because he's not my boyfriend." The answer came so quickly that Mason wasn't prepared for it. "What?" "He never was." "But..." "He's a family friend I've known for years." Mason felt heat rush into his face. Suddenly he felt ridiculous. Days of anxiety. Days of jealousy. Days of avoiding Hunter. All because of a misunderstanding. Hunter's smile softened. "You thought I was dating him?" Mason groaned. "Please stop talking." Hunter laughed again. "No wonder you've been acting weird." Mason wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Instead he looked away. The embarrassment was bad enough. What came next was worse. Because Hunter's expression slowly became thoughtful. Almost serious. "You were jealous." The words landed between them. Mason's heartbeat immediately sped up. Neither spoke. The truth hung in the air. Impossible to ignore. Hunter wasn't stupid. Mason wasn't either. Both knew exactly what that jealousy meant. The silence stretched longer. Finally Mason whispered, "Maybe." Hunter's expression changed. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. That uncertainty frightened Mason more than anger would have. Because it meant Hunter understood. It meant he felt the shift happening too. And neither of them knew what to do with it. Over the following weeks things changed. Not dramatically. Not immediately. Just enough to notice. Conversations became more careful. Long looks lasted a little longer. Silences felt heavier. Both men became aware of feelings neither wanted to name first. One evening they met for dinner. The atmosphere felt different. Mason noticed it immediately. Hunter seemed distracted, distant, lost in thought. Eventually Mason asked, "What's wrong?" Hunter stared at his coffee. "Nothing." "Then, everything." Mason frowned. "What does that mean?" Hunter exhaled slowly. "It means I'm trying to be realistic." A bad feeling settled in Mason's stomach. "About what?" Hunter finally looked at him. "Us." The single word hit harder than Mason expected. Because Hunter had said it. Not friendship. Not companionship. Hunter leaned back in his chair. "You're 24. Mason already knew where this conversation was going. "Hunter." "I'm 52. Mason stayed silent. "We're in completely different stages of life." "That doesn't matter." "It matters." Hunter's voice remained calm, but Mason could hear the fear beneath it. What if people judge you? I don't care. What if they judge me? Mason laughed softly. You're a police officer. People judge you every day. For a moment Hunter almost smiled. Then the smile disappeared. You deserve someone your age. There it is. Hunter looked confused. There what is? The real problem. Mason leaned forward. You don't think I know what I'm doing. Hunter opened his mouth, then closed it again, because deep down he knew Mason was right. The issue wasn't society. The issue wasn't age. The issue was fear. Hunter was terrified. Terrified of getting hurt. Terrified of hoping. Terrified of losing something that had become important. As weeks passed, that fear created distance between them. Hunter stopped texting first. Hunter became harder to reach. Hunter buried himself in work. The more he pulled away, the more it hurt, especially for Mason. One rainy evening, everything finally exploded. Thunder rolled across Austin. Rain hammered against the windows of Hunter's house. The storm outside matched the emotions building inside both men. Mason stood in Hunter's living room, frustrated, heartbroken, angry. I can't keep doing this. Hunter looked up. Doing what? Pretending. The room fell silent. Mason took a step forward. You care about me. Hunter looked away. You don't know that. Stop. Mason.
No.
Months of frustration poured out. Stop treating me like I'm a child. Hunter remained silent. Stop acting like these feelings aren't real. Still silence. Mason's voice cracked. And stop pushing me away because you're scared. The words hit their target. Hunter lowered his head. For several seconds he couldn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely above a whisper. You think I'm scared? Aren't you? The rain pounded harder outside. Hunter laughed sadly, then finally admitted the truth. Yes. The honesty stunned them both. Hunter stood slowly. His eyes never left Mason's.
I'm terrified.
Mason's chest tightened. Hunter took a shaky breath. For years I convinced myself I didn't need anyone. His voice cracked slightly. Then you showed up. Silence filled the room. And now? Hunter looked directly into his eyes. Now I care about you more than I ever planned to. The confession stole the air from Mason's lungs. Months of uncertainty vanished in an instant. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The feelings were finally out in the open. Real. Impossible to deny. Yet before either man could say another word, Hunter's phone rang. The sound shattered the moment. Hunter glanced at the screen. His expression immediately changed. What is it? Mason asked. Hunter looked up slowly. It's a transfer offer. A transfer? Hunter nodded. The smile had completely vanished from his face. Another state. The room suddenly felt colder. Mason's heart sank, because both of them understood exactly what that could mean. Just when they had finally admitted their feelings, life was about to pull them apart. The room felt silent after Hunter's words. Another state. A transfer. A fresh start. Everything they had finally admitted to each other suddenly felt fragile. Mason forced himself to speak. When do you have to decide? Hunter looked down at the phone in his hand. A week. A week. 7 days. That was all the time standing between them and a goodbye neither of them wanted. Mason nodded slowly. That's a good opportunity. The words tasted bitter. Hunter could hear it. So that's it. Mason looked away. What else am I supposed to say? Neither had an answer. For the next few days, things felt different. Not because they stopped talking. Because every conversation suddenly carried a deadline. Every coffee felt important. Every laugh felt precious. Every goodbye felt heavier. Hunter attended meetings about the transfer. His colleagues congratulated him. His supervisors encouraged him. Everyone assumed he would accept. After all, it was a promotion. More money. More authority. A better position. Everything he had spent decades working toward. Yet every time he imagined leaving Austin, one face appeared in his mind. Mason. One evening Hunter sat alone on his porch watching the sunset. The transfer papers rested on the table beside him. All he had to do was sign. Instead, he found himself remembering that first traffic stop. The nervous young man speeding down the highway. The unexpected phone call when the car broke down. The countless conversations. The laughter. The friendship. The feelings he never expected. For years he had focused on responsibility, duty, work, achievement. But now he faced a question that scared him. What if success wasn't the thing he wanted most anymore? Meanwhile, Mason tried convincing himself everything was fine. It wasn't. Everywhere he went reminded him of Hunter. The coffee shop they visited. The diner where they first had lunch. The riverside park where they watched sunsets together. The city suddenly felt smaller, lonelier. One night Mason sat alone in his apartment staring at his phone. A message from Hunter appeared. "Can we meet tomorrow?" His heart immediately raced. "Sure." The reply came seconds later. Riverside Park. Noon. The next morning Mason barely slept. By noon he was standing near the water overlooking downtown Austin. The city skyline shimmered beneath the bright Texas sun. People walked nearby. Cyclists passed along the trail. Yet Mason noticed none of it. His attention stayed fixed on one thing. Hunter. The older man approached slowly. There was something different about him. Something calm, certain, as if he had finally made peace with a decision. Mason swallowed nervously. "So?" Hunter smiled. "So?" For several seconds neither spoke. Then Hunter held up a folder. The transfer paperwork. Mason's stomach dropped. Hunter noticed immediately. The disappointment in his eyes was impossible to hide. A small smile touched Hunter's lips. "You know." "What?" "I spent my entire career believing promotions were everything." Mason remained silent. Hunter looked out across the water. "I chased every opportunity, every achievement, every goal." Then he looked back at Mason. "And for the first time in my life." He paused. "I didn't sign." Mason blinked. "What?" Hunter laughed softly. "I turned it down." For a moment Mason couldn't process the words. "You what?" "I turned it down." The world seemed to stop. "You stayed." Hunter nodded. A smile slowly spread across Mason's face. "You stayed." Hunter stepped closer. "Yeah." The relief hit Mason so hard he almost laughed. Almost cried. Maybe both. "Why?" Hunter's eyes softened. The answer came without hesitation. "Because I already found what matters most." The words settled between them. Simple. Honest. Real. For the first time, neither looked away. Neither hid. Neither pretended. Months of uncertainty disappeared. Hunter reached for Mason's hand. Mason immediately took it. The gesture felt natural, like something they should have done long ago. People walked past. Cars moved through the city. Life continued around them. Neither cared. All that mattered was the person standing in front of them. Months later, their relationship became official. Not everyone understood it. Some people questioned the age difference. Others made assumptions. Hunter had expected that. What surprised him was how little it mattered. Because every challenge became easier when they faced it together. For Mason, life slowly improved. He found a better-paying job. Moved into a nicer apartment. Started planning for the future instead of merely surviving. For Hunter, retirement finally stopped feeling frightening. Because retirement no longer meant being alone. 1 year later, they returned to the same riverside park. The same bench. The same view. The same city that had brought them together. The sun slowly disappeared behind the Austin skyline. Mason leaned against Hunter's shoulder. "Do you ever think about it?" Hunter smiled. "The speeding ticket?" Mason laughed. "Yeah." Hunter shook his head. "Honestly." "What?" "I'm glad you were speeding." Mason burst out laughing. "That is literally the worst thing a police officer has ever said." Hunter laughed too. "Maybe." The evening breeze drifted across the water. Everything felt peaceful. Comfortable, right? Hunter wrapped an arm around him. For a moment neither spoke. Then Mason smiled. "You know." "What?" "The funniest part?" Hunter raised an eyebrow. What? Mason looked out toward the city lights. I thought that day was the worst day of my life. Hunter squeezed his hand gently. And now? Mason smiled. Now it's my favorite memory. Hunter smiled back. And as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, both men realized something. Sometimes the road you're trying to avoid becomes the road that leads you exactly where you're meant to be. Before you go, tell me something in the comments. Speech balloon, if you were Mason, would you have called Hunter after your car broke down? And if you enjoyed this emotional gay romance story, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, subscribe for more gay romance stories every week. Your support helps the channel grow and brings more heartfelt love stories to life. Until next time, remember, sometimes one unexpected moment can change your entire future.